The moment my 8-year-old grandson looked up at me and whispered, "Grandpa, please don't make me go back there," I knew something was terribly wrong. Then he pulled his sleeve down and tried to hide the bruises around his wrist. And when I asked my son-in-law's father what he had done, the old man smiled and said, "Maybe the boy needed to learn who the real men in this family are." That was the moment I stopped seeing him as family. And before the night was over, I made one phone call that exposed a secret he had buried for more than 30 years. My name is Robert Hale. I'm 66 years old, retired, and a widower. For most of my life, I worked as a maintenance supervisor for the county courthouse. It wasn't a glamorous job, but I was proud of it. I fixed broken doors, repaired old heating systems, and made sure the building kept running. People rarely noticed me, but I noticed everything. I learned that the quietest person in a room often sees the truth before anyone else. My wife, Susan, used to say I worried too much. She would laugh and tell me, "Robert, you're always waiting for something to go wrong." After she passed away 8 years ago, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for disaster. I was afraid of losing the people I loved. My daughter Emily was all I had left. And then there was Noah, my grandson, 8 years old, smart, curious, and full of questions. He loved dinosaurs, chocolate milk, and building little cities out of cardboard boxes. When he called me grandpa, it made me feel useful again. Noah's biological father died when Noah was 2. Emily raised him alone for years. Then she met Jason. Jason was kind. He treated Noah with patience and respect. He taught him how to ride a bike. He showed up for school events. And when Noah had nightmares, Jason would sit beside his bed until he fell asleep. I respected Jason. Eventually, Emily married him. For the first time in years, I thought my daughter had found peace. But Jason came with a father. His name was Ronald Mercer. Everyone called him Ron's. Ron was 70 years old and owned a successful construction company. He donated money to local charities. He shook hands with politicians. He had his picture in the newspaper more times than I could count. People called him generous. People called him respectable. But I never trusted him. The first time we met, Ron looked at Noah and asked, "So this is Emily's boy?" I smiled politely. "This is my grandson." Ron nodded. "Of course, but he isn't really a Mercer." The room went quiet. Jason looked embarrassed. Emily changed the subject. And I told myself Ron was just old-fashioned. That was my first mistake. Months passed. Ron made little comments. Whenever Noah spilled something, Ron would say, "Kids need stronger discipline." Whenever Noah cried, Ron would laugh. "Too sensitive, the world won't be gentle with him." And whenever Noah called Jason dad, Ron would say, "Let's not confuse the boy." Each comment hurt, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to create problems for Emily. I didn't want my daughter to feel trapped between her father and her husband's family. So I swallowed my anger. And every time I stayed silent, Ron became bolder. The first real warning came during a family dinner. Noah accidentally knocked over a glass of juice. It spilled across the table. No one was hurt, but Ron slammed his hand down. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted. Noah froze. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You're always sorry." Emily stood up. "Ron, it was an accident." Ron pointed at Noah's. "That boy needs discipline. Everyone keeps treating him like he's special." Jason stepped between them. "Dad, stop." But Ron shook his head. "You're raising him to be weak." I looked at Noah's. His eyes were full of tears. He wasn't angry. He was ashamed. That hurt me more than anything. I took his hand. "Come on, buddy, we're leaving." As we walked toward the door, Ron called after me. "You're part of the problem, Robert. You spoil him." I turned around. For 1 second, I almost said everything. But Noah squeezed my hand. So I left. That night, Noah sat beside me on the porch. "Grandpa?" "Oh, yes." "Why does Grandpa Ron like me?" I looked at him. I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to say that some people care more about control than kindness. But he was only 8. So I lied. He likes you, he just doesn't know how to show it. Noah looked down. Then why does he always make me feel bad? I had no answer. And that silence became my second mistake. 2 weeks later, Emily and Jason were invited to a wedding. Ron offered to watch Noah. I immediately said no. I can keep him, I told Emily. But she smiled. Dad, Jason will be home too, it's only a few hours. Jason promised me he wouldn't leave Noah alone with Ron. So I agreed. I wish I hadn't. Around 9 that night, my phone rang. It was Emily. Dad, can you pick Noah up? Why? He wants to come home. Put him on the phone. There was a long pause. Then I heard Noah breathing. Grandpa, what happened? Can you come get me? His voice was shaking. I'm already getting my keys. When I arrived, Jason was standing near the front door. He looked nervous. Everything is okay, he said. Then why is Noah crying? He got upset. Over what? Jason looked toward the living room. My dad was trying to teach him a lesson. I pushed past him. Noah was sitting on the floor. His face was pale. His hands were hidden behind his back. Come here, I said. He ran toward me. He wrapped both arms around my waist. Then he whispered, Grandpa, please don't make me go back there. I gently pulled his hands forward. There were red marks around both wrists. My heart stopped. What happened? Noah looked toward the hallway. Ron appeared. He was holding a glass of water. Your grandson was being difficult, he said. What did you do? I made him sit still. Why are there marks on his wrists? Ron sighed. He kept trying to leave. Noah began crying. He tied me to the chair. The room became silent. I looked at Ron's. You tied an 8-year-old to a chair. It was a loose rope, don't exaggerate. Why? He refused to apologize. For what? Ron stared at Noah. He called me means. My hands started shaking. You tied him up because he called you mean. Ron stepped closer. Robert, you're making this bigger than it is. I moved between him and Noah. You don't get to decide how big this is. Then Ron smiled. Not because he was sorry. Because he believed I was powerless. He looked at Noah and said, maybe the boy needed to learn who the real men in this family are. Something inside me changed. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten him. I picked up Noah's jacket. Then I looked Ron directly in the eyes. You made a mistake. He laughed. No, you're the one making a mistake. I walked out. And from my car, I made one phone call. The person I called was not the police. Not yet. I called Linda Brooks. Linda had worked at the courthouse for 20 years. She was now the director of a child advocacy center. When she answered, I said, Linda, my grandson says an adult tied him to a chair. Her voice changed immediately. Is the child safe? Oh, yes. Bring him in and don't question him anymore. An hour later, Noah was speaking with a trained child interviewer. I watched from another room. Every word felt like a knife. Noah explained that Ron tied his wrists to the arms of a wooden chair. Then Ron stood in front of him and said, you need to learn who has power in this family. But that wasn't the worst part. The interviewer asked, has this happened before? Noah looked down. Then he nodded. My stomach dropped. He did it once before, Noah said. When? Last Christmas. I remembered that day. Noah disappeared for almost 20 minutes. When he returned, his face was red. Ron told everyone Noah had thrown a tantrum. I believed him. I believed Ron's. The regret hit me so hard that I had to leave the room. I kept asking myself, how did I miss it? But then Noah revealed something else. Ron had warned him. If you tell your grandfather, everyone will think you're lying. That was why Noah had begged me not to tell Emily. He wasn't protecting Ron. He was afraid nobody would believe him. The next morning, Emily came to my house. She was furious. Not at Ron's. That me? You reported him, she shouted. I asked for help. You're trying to destroy my marriage. No, Ron did that. Emily started crying. Jason says Noah misunderstood. I stared at her. Misunderstood what? The rope. She covered her face. Jason said his father only restrained Noah because Noah was acting dangerously. Noah was sitting in a chair. You weren't there. No, but I saw the marks. Then Jason walked inside. His eyes were red. Robert, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. Emily turned toward him. Tell him. But Jason didn't speak. He walked to the table and placed an old envelope in front of me. What is this? I asked. My mother's. Jason's mother had died 10 years earlier. He opened the envelopes. Inside were handwritten notes. One page said, Ron frightened Jason when he was a child. He called it discipline, I called it abuse. I looked at Jason. You know. He nodded. When I was 9, my father tied me to a chair because I broke a window. Emily stared at him. You never told me. I was ashamed. Then why did you let Noah stay with him? Jason started crying. I thought he had changed. The room became silent. Then Jason said something I never expected. My father told me if I supported you, he would remove me from the company. There it was. The truth. Ron controlled Jason's job. His money. His future. Jason had spent his whole life afraid of losing his father's approval. But now he looked at me and said, I'm done protecting him. That was the first twist. The man I thought would defend Ron became the person who helped expose him. The investigation lasted several weeks. Ron denied everything. He told people I hated him because he had more money. He claimed I wanted to destroy his family. He told members of his charity that I was lying. Then Jason found something. An old security drive. Ron had cameras around the house. One camera faced the hallway outside the basement. The footage didn't show Noah tied to the chair, but it showed Ron leading Noah downstairs. 23 minutes later, Noah came upstairs crying. Ron followed him, and in Ron's hand was a piece of rope. When investigators confronted him, Ron changed his story. First, he said Noah was lying. Then he said it was a joke. Then he said it was discipline. But the biggest twist came from someone nobody expected. Ron's former business partner contacted the investigator. He brought old documents from Ron's company. For years, Ron had used charity projects to hide unpaid labor and illegal construction work. The same man who publicly spoke about protecting children had built his reputation by threatening people into silence. And there was more. The business partner had saved recordings. In one recording, Ron said, "Fear keeps people loyal, kindness makes them weak." The recordings were turned over to investigators. Ron's entire image began to collapse. The charity removed him from its board. His business partners cut ties with him. People who once praised him stopped answering his calls. But the greatest punishment wasn't financial. It was personal. Jason resigned from the company. He refused to speak to his father. And Emily told Ron he would never be alone with Noah again. Ron called me one night. "You destroyed everything," he said. I held the phone tightly. "No, Ron, I protected my grandson. You turned my son against me. No, you showed him who you really are." Then Ron said, "You'll regret this." I looked toward the living room. Noah was asleep on my couch. For the first time in months, his face looked peaceful. "My only regret," I said, "is that I didn't stop you sooner." Then I ended the call. Months passed. Ron faced legal consequences. His business lost contracts. His public reputation disappeared, but karma gave him something money couldn't repair. Loneliness. Jason stopped calling. Emily blocked his numbers, and Noah no longer feared him. One afternoon, Noah and I sat in the park. He was drawing dinosaurs. Grandpa, oh yes, am I a bad kid? I felt my eyes fill with tears. I moved closer. Noah, you are a good boy. But Ron said I make people angry. I put my hand on his shoulder. Listen to me, people are responsible for their own anger. You are never responsible for an adult hurting you. He thought about that. Then he smiled. Do you think Mom believes me now? Oh yes. And Jason. Oh yes. And you. I hugged him. I believed you the moment you told me. He rested his head against my shoulder. For the first time in months, he looked completely safe. But I still carry regrets. I regret every time I ignored Ron's cruel jokes. Every time I called his behavior old-fashioned. Every time I stayed silent because I wanted the family to get along. I learned something painful. The first warning is not always loud. Sometimes it is a cruel joke. A small insult. A child becoming quiet around one person. And when we ignore those signs, silence can become permission. Ron believed power came from money. He believed respect came from fear. He believed nobody would ever challenge him. But he forgot something. A child's voice can be small and still be powerful enough to expose a man who spent his entire life pretending to be good. And all it took was one phone call.